All right, so welcome everyone to our Arts Capital Panelist Orientation. My name is Abby Ninehouse. I am the Arts Capital Program Director at the Maryland State Arts Council, and I'm happy to be joined by a few of my colleagues today. So I would like for them to introduce themselves. Kathy, would you like to start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Teixeira. I'm the Grants Director, and this is a really important program that we have here that's relatively new. So we're really thankful for you all for being part of this process.
Jess?
Good morning. My name is Jess Porter, Senior Program Director. Here just kind of in a supportive capacity. Mostly we'll just be listening in and echoing Kathy's appreciation for everyone's time and your input and participation. We really look forward to working with you.
Great, thanks, Jess. And Ellie?
Good morning. My name is Ellie Maria. I'm the Special Projects and Grants Assistant at MSAC. And likewise to Jess, I'm also just providing some supportive administrative support here. And yeah, glad to see you all here and looking forward to getting the Arts Capital program rolling.
Great, thanks, Ellie. So to get started, we have some of our standard MSAC slides to go through. So for those of you that have been on any of our sessions previously, they should be familiar to you, but we will go through them so everyone has the same information. And so first, today we're using the Google Meet platform. And so this is a screenshot of the features. At the bottom left are the time and meeting information. And the bottom center are your controls that will include your mute and unmute button. We do ask that you remain muted most of the time, just that way we can make sure we have a clear recording. But please, if you have any questions, raise your hand and we can answer them. The camera button, which turns the video on or off. There's a closed caption button, which turns computer-generated closed captioning on and off in support of meeting accessibility. Also, in keeping with State of Maryland guidance on generative AI, please do not use AI meeting assistants of any kind. Any virtual assistants appearing in the meeting will be removed. Emojis are available by clicking on the reactions button that looks like a smiling face emoji. And there's a raise hand function. Explain how, if you need to say anything or if you have any questions, please use that feature. You just click it and it will alert us that you have something that you would like to add to the conversation. And finally, the red button with the old school phone handset is to leave the meeting. So on the bottom right of your screen are other features, including access to see meeting information, the participant list, and chat feature. So that icon looks like a word bubble. And if you go back to more options button, the 3 vertical dots in the center of your screen, clicking that button allows you to change how your screen appears and accesses other features. So this land acknowledgement statement is the first of our guiding documents that we share to ground MSAC meetings. I'll read them aloud for accessibility purposes. The land acknowledgement derives from the MSAC Land Acknowledgement Project, in which MSAC staff consulted with tribal peoples whose lands are claimed by the state of Maryland. Visit msac.org for more information, including maps, tribal histories, key concepts, and best practices for making and delivering land acknowledgements. To go beyond performativity, MSAC is actively engaging with tribal peoples to understand barriers and improve accessibility to MSAC grant funding and other state resources. So our statement is, we acknowledge the lands and waters now known as Maryland are the home of its first peoples, the Akahenak Indian Tribe, Assateague Peoples Tribe, Cedarville Band of Piscataway Indians, Choptico Band of Indians, Lenape Tribe, Nanticoke Tribe, Nase Wawash Band of Indians, Piscataway Conoy Tribe, Piscataway Indian Nation, Pocomoke Indian Nation, Susquehannock Indians, Yakani River Band of Shawnee, and tribes in the Chesapeake watershed who have seemingly vanished since the coming of colonialism. We acknowledge that this land is now home to other tribal peoples living here in diaspora. We acknowledge the forced removal of many from the lands and waterways that nurtured them as kin. We acknowledge the degradation that continues to be wrought on the land and waters in pursuit of resources. We acknowledge the right of the land and waterways to heal so that they can continue to provide food and medicine for all. We acknowledge that it is our collective obligation to pursue policies and practices that respect the land and waters so that our reciprocal relationship with them can be fully restored. And next, we have our equity and justice statement, which overviews our commitment to these principles. And so our statement is: the arts celebrate our state's diversity, connect our shared humanity, and transform individuals and communities. The Maryland State Arts Council is committed to advancing and modeling equity, diversity, accessibility, and inclusion in all aspects of our organization and across communities in our state. MSAC and its grantees are committed to embracing equity and non-discrimination regardless of race, religious creed, color, age, gender expression, sexual orientation, disability, class, language, and/or ability. And we have our mission and vision. Our vision is MSAC plays an essential role ensuring every person has access to the transformative power of the arts. Our mission is MSAC advances the arts in our state by providing leadership that champions creative expression, diverse programming, equitable access, lifelong learning, and the arts as a celebrated contributor to the quality of life for all the people of Maryland. In 2024, our agency adopted a strategic plan ensuring the arts remain essential to Maryland's communities and economy. The plan includes 5 pillars, each with key goals. First is access, which is to bolster access to arts experiences and resources. Awareness is amplify the stories of Maryland's arts sector and the value of public support. Connection, foster networks with and beyond the arts sector. Equity, cultivate a thriving arts ecosystem centered in equity. Leadership, commit to a culture of care and innovation. More information is available on our website, msac.org, under the About section and Strategic Plan. So next we have our creative meeting actions, which will help guide our discussions and meetings. And so what I would like for people to do is take turns coming off mute and reading one action aloud in turn. I'll read the first action and then please just jump in when you'd like. So our first one is celebrate being in the space with other creative people.
Engage with everyone's presence as a gift.
Acknowledge that together we know a lot.
Enter the conversation of curiosity and inquiry.
Share your idea and trust that it will be heard.
Use I statements.
Focus your language on the task at hand.
Hold one another accountable with care.
Honor all perspectives and build on shared ideas.
Balance speaking with listening.
Thank you all. Are there any questions or additional actions to be considered by the group? All right. So in addition to these actions, we encourage you to introduce yourself by name when speaking and offer pronouns if you'd like. We will also be doing a little intro section in just a moment, so we'll have a chance to get to know each other in the group a little bit. And so we would like for everyone to just respect people's names and chosen pronouns and respect one another throughout this process. MSAC offers free professional development regularly, including info sessions providing technical assistance for grant seekers, topic-specific sessions covering legal issues, nonprofit and creative entrepreneurship best practices, and other subjects of interest to the arts sector, informal virtual meet and greets that we call Coffee with the Council, and in-person office hours hosted around the state for people to get their questions answered directly by our team, and much more. MSAC also sponsors the Maryland Arts Summit, an annual in-person convening providing opportunities to network, share accomplishments, and hold productive conversations on how to move the arts sector forward. The summit is organized by Maryland Citizen for the Arts, which you can find out more about them online with that link. And you can also reach out with your ideas for future professional development sessions, as well as keep track of what's coming soon via the links at the bottom of the slide. Finally, MSAC does not endorse, recommend, support, or favor any specific commercial product, services by trade name, vendor, or program, included in professional development sessions or elsewhere. See our full endorsement disclaimer at the last link. And I would like to add that since this is a relatively new program, we would love any ideas that you have about professional development, specifically around our Arts Capital Grant Program. So I would just encourage all of you, while you're reviewing our applications this cycle, to please let us know if any ideas come up. We obviously want to be responsive to what the needs are and what we think is maybe some gaps. So please keep that in mind as you're reviewing during this cycle. So there are many ways to get involved with MSAC. Two important ways are by applying to be panelists, as you all know, or an editor. So panelists review and score grant applications. Editors review the program policies and make recommendations for changes. We post the schedule of panelist calls as well as information about applying to be a panelist or editor on the Ways to Get Involved page on our website. Applications are through our grants platform, Smart Simple, which you're all going to be very familiar with if you're not already. And the roles are compensated. So please consider helping us out and also share the word. This is something that I was not as aware of before I started working here. And so I try to spread that because I think it is a great opportunity to support Maryland's arts sector. So let people know, because I think it is something that we can spread the word more about. Great. So now we're to introductions. So, you can use all of these bullets or some of them, but I would love to go around. I want people to definitely let us know what your name and pronouns are, and then whatever you want to share from there, such as where you work or what your art form or forms are, where are you joining us from, so preferably city, county, etc. And finally, and really importantly, why are you interested in serving as a panelist for the Arts Capital Grant? So would someone like to start us off?
Hi, I'll start. My name is Tanya Myers. I am a grants manager with the DC Commission on Arts and Humanities. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm joining you from DC, so right down the road. And I'm interested in serving as a panelist just because in my line of work, I just know how important panelists are to the benefit of creating more cultural spaces and enhancing the arts in general.
Great, thanks, Tanya.
I can go next. My name is Hadassah St. Huber. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an independent scholar and board member of Diaspora Vibe Cultural Arts Incubator, which cultivates and nurtures emerging artists. So although I'm not an artist myself, I am an art appreciator, but I also have a lot of experience dealing with capital projects, renovations, particularly fire suppression systems, climate controls, environmental monitoring, all of the like. Most of my experience comes from serving as a senior program officer at National Endowment for the Humanities previously. I'm joining from Silver Spring, and I'm interested simply because I love supporting arts and culture in Maryland, also nationally. And so that's my particular interest, but also this particular program, I love seeing more facilities that are a little bit more sustainable and also accessible for more people to enjoy the arts. So thanks.
Thanks, Hadassah.
Hi, am I stepping on anyone here? Don't think so. Okay. I am Colleen Daly. I am joining from pronouns she, her, hers. Joining from Anne Arundel County. I'm based in Annapolis. I work in DC though. I work as a contract specialist for the Library of Congress. And I will kind of jump off of what Tanya and Hadassah said. I'm interested in being a panelist because I see from my job what is required of the position, and I also think it's a really critical role to play in sort of evaluating opportunities and ensuring that that really great projects get the funding that they need. And then also just with my experience currently as a federal employee, I understand that state-based funding is really important right now, and so I want to be able to keep participating in a process that makes that available to people.
Thanks, Colleen.
I'll go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Andy Cook. I am joining from the Remington neighborhood of Baltimore City. I am a photographer, painter, musician, cultural programmer. Up until last week, I had served as the director of the Made in Baltimore program for the city for a number of years. And my interest in serving on this panel comes straight from that work and just seeing how challenging it is for creatives to access real estate and get capital projects off the ground. It's nowhere near enough money for that kind of work to take place. So I think this is one of the, a shining light in that vast chasm of funding that we need for the arts in Maryland. So I'm happy to serve in that capacity.
Thanks, Andy.
I can go next. My name is Belvie Russ. I use she, her pronouns. I volunteer with numerous theaters in Washington and Maryland. I'm joining you guys from Silver Spring, and I'm interested because my background is in arts management. And with all of the cuts going on with the government right now, I think it's important to continue funding the arts because it's usually the first thing that's cut.
I can go next. My name is David Cantor, he, him. I'm talking today from Baltimore City. I'm in the Mount Vernon neighborhood. I'm a donor services officer at the Baltimore Community Foundation, and my background is in theater and arts management. And in my work, like many of you, I've seen a lot of people and organizations with significant capital needs, and I know that if they're addressed, it's going to improve everyone's ability to produce and access arts.
Thanks, David.
My name is Susan Malone, she, her, hers. I'm the executive director of Wide Angle Youth Media. I echo everything that everyone is saying here. I come from a photography background, and we were one of the first grantees for this grant. And so I really felt it was important to give back because I really believe in the power of how the arts can drive economics in Maryland. And I think I learned so much being a panelist, and I get to really understand the landscape of how the State Arts Council is investing in arts organizations around the state, and I love that.
Thanks, Susan.
I can go next. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Pablo. Okay. Hey, all. I'm Sarah Lourdes. I use she and her pronouns. I'm based in Baltimore City in Edna Gardens, and I come from a dance background. And right now I work as the program director for performing arts at Mid-Atlantic Arts, which is a regional funder. And so partially interested in being on this panel as a person who also runs panels. MSAC, y'all are like gold standard panel runners. So excited to learn from you in this way. And also what other folks have said, the importance of safe, accessible space for arts is huge across disciplines. And so I'm really enthusiastic to be part of a program that will help support that. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Pablo?
Hey, I'm Pablo de Oliveira, he, him, his. I am multiple roles. I am the executive director and co-founder of Educarte, which is a Montgomery County Latin American performing arts organization, serving primarily Brazilian arts. I also am the community engagement and education manager at Strathmore, and an artist when I have time. I do music. And I'm joining today from College Park, Maryland, Prince George's County. I'm interested in serving as a panelist for the Arts Capital Grant because one, I do want to learn as well. Someone mentioned before, I think it's a great learning opportunity to get a lay of the land, also learn more about the new program. Another interest I have is, learning how smaller organizations like the one that I founded and communities that come from a low, not that much resource or connections, how it can benefit from the program, and make sure that our voices are heard.
Great, thanks, Pablo. Do we have anyone else?
Hi, yes, I'll go. My name is Mercedes Cardwell. My pronouns are she, they. I am a rising arts administrator. I'm presently working with American Composers Orchestra virtually, but I'm also a music educator. And I am from Hagerstown, based in Hagerstown, which is Washington County, Maryland. And I also want to I guess part of the reason that I am interested in serving is as a learning opportunity to learn more about the grant process, both from the grantor point of view and also the grantee point of view, but also just to continue contributing to the arts and culture space here in Maryland, since many organizations here are really depending on the state support. So getting to contribute there as well.
Great. Thanks so much.
I also have to go. Good morning. My name is Ashley McKinnon. I am based here in Hyattsville, Maryland. I use she, her pronouns, and my background is in dance. And I am interested in serving on this particular grant panel because I've done a lot with MSAC before as a grant panelist in other ways, but I've never actually done anything on the side of, I guess on the infrastructure kind of side of grant panel work. It's always just been on the content side. And so I'm really interested to see how, the infrastructure, looking into getting, capital off the ground and how building changes and working with making sure that it's accessible for people with disabilities, how all of that also impacts the content that is also being done within those buildings. So that's what led me to this panel, and it's nice to meet you all.
Great. Thanks, Ashley. All right. So, and I realized I did not share my pronouns. So once again, I'm Abby Ninehouse, like number 9 and then house, just make it easier. My pronouns are she, her, they, them. I am in downtown Baltimore currently, but I live in the Waverlys in Baltimore City. And my art forms are classical instrumentalists and performance art. And so this is my first cycle with this program. And so I'm really excited to be able to work with all of you this year. And it is such an amazing panel. And I'm so excited to have you all convened. It's just such an amazing group of applicants. And I'm so glad that all of you have volunteered to serve this year, because I think we're all going to have a great time learning together. And I just want to reiterate that I'm really open to feedback. I want to learn with and from you all. So please, let me know if you have any ideas or things that come up. I'm really open to feedback so we can continue to make sure that this grant opportunity is as accessible and open to everyone that is eligible. So thank you all. We're going to move on to our agenda. So we've already gone through our grounding documents and introductions. We're going to move into our Arts Capital overview. Then moving into panelist responsibilities, and Kathy will take over for the implicit bias in the panel process. We'll then take a short break. And after that, we'll go into kind of the meat of the application review process, including going over our panel meeting that will happen, our panel meetings that will happen in January, our panel process technology, compensation, and then we'll have time for questions and reflection and closing. So before I move forward, are there any thoughts or tangents or comments, or we're ready to dive in? All right, excellent. So what is the Arts Capital Grant? And Susan, that's probably a very familiar photo for you. And I hope it's okay that we have permission to use it. But this is the amazing new wide angle youth media space. So I just want to give a shout out to one of our panelists and first cycle grantee. So the purpose of the Arts Capital Grant is to provide eligible organizations with direct access to state capital funding for projects that enhance or create a complete, usable, and accessible arts facility. And I always think it's important to go into kind of where this has come from. And, this program is thanks to great advocacy from many people throughout the state that were able to get this in through the legislative sessions and into state law under that article of economic development in 2021. And if you go to our msac.org/artscapital website. You can actually look at the legislation language if you would like. That for me is kind of my grounding document that I go back to make sure that we're staying in alignment with what the state law requires. And so after that was passed in 2021, we had our first program launch late in fiscal year 2024. And so since then, we've been able to get through 2 cycles, and this is now our 3rd. It does mandate that there will be $3 million allocated of the governor's annual budget for 5 years. So it is written in that we should have this funding available to us annually until or through 2029. With the possibility of program renewal beyond that year. And so we are working really hard to make sure this program continues post 2029, and also hopefully that we'll be able to eventually get more than the $3 million a year, because we're really thankful that we have that. But obviously $3 million for the entire state is goes pretty quickly. So it's good to know that this funding is derived from state GO bonds, general obligation bonds. So that's basically state debt. It's important just to know because it's not part of the other funding sources that MSAC gets. It's a separate item from GO bonds, and it's the only capital project actually that the Commerce Department is running. So it is just important to know that like the funding streams are separate, and hopefully that will allow us to have a little bit more stability through these uncertain fiscal years. So and the reason why it was created and why it is part of MSAC's grant programs is because we wanted to make sure that there was a pathway for eligible organizations to access capital funds, hopefully through a more equitable process with a predictable schedule and similar to all of our other MSAC grant programs. So hopefully it was more familiar and easier for organizations to be able to access. But this being able to get an arts capital grant does not prohibit an organization from receiving other funding. So the 3 things that are 3 buckets that are in our legislation and what we're mandated for and what we're strongly encouraging organizations to apply for are, first, to prioritize energy efficient building methods and technologies. Second, to increase facility access for people with disabilities, people of color, people living at or below the federal poverty level, and just in general, expanding the organization's programming and ability to serve a broader audience. So those are some of the things that we will be explicitly scoring, and you'll see that reflected in our application and rubric that we will be reviewing later on. And once again, just the review of what we're doing. We want to be looking for projects that involve the expansion, renovation, or major repair of existing facilities or infrastructure. Now, we can support projects that are focusing on new construction, and they are eligible. However, what we're going to be looking for is basically the feasibility that their project proposal will be able to be completed and create a fully functional, accessible, and usable arts facility within 2 years of fund disbursement. And so that's an important caveat, the 2 years of fund disbursement. We have learned, and Susan, I'm sure, can share a little bit more personally, but we've learned that it's a very long process to actually get the funding out the door after the panel decides who will be receiving them. And so that's why we've said within 2 years of the disbursement is what the support period will be. So for example, our 24 cycle grants actually got the funding out the door around Labor Day of this year, so of 2025. So their support period will be from August 2025 to August 2027. And so what we're hoping for, and we've been able to tie up some of the timelines a little bit. What we're hoping for is that for this cycle, programs will see funding somewhere during the summer of 2026. So that's obviously, some of it's out of our control. Getting to the Board of Public Works seems to be the most time taking part of the process. So, what we're telling people is to assume that it will be around summer 2026. So, just keep that in mind as we're thinking about that 2-year mark. It's not necessarily 2 years from our panel meeting in January. It's more like 2 years from sometime this summer. Any questions before I continue plowing through? All right. So we have these grants available for organizations, and they can choose to request anywhere from 50 to 500,000 and anything in between those numbers. We do allow for 15% of the request, up to 15% of the request, to be used for administrative overhead. We do not require a match. And also the other really positive part of this grant is that the full amount of the award is dispersed once we're able to get it through that process that I just explained a little bit. So even though it does take us a while, it is really nice that then the organizations are able to have that full amount right in the beginning of that 2-year period. So that way they can get started on their projects at that point. It is not reimbursement based, and this is a very unique aspect of this program that I don't think is existing in many other grant programs in the state, if any. So, we're really happy about that because it does really lend to our goal of accessibility for organizations to be able to utilize this funding. So next is project site, and this is something that Jess and I have been working really hard during our eligibility review to make sure that we're ensuring that people meet this standard. But the application organization must either own their property or they have to hold a lease with at least 5 years remaining with the property owner. And so the other thing that we're looking for is that the physical property has to be primarily used for accessible arts and cultural programming. So those are all things that we're looking for on the staff eligibility, and not necessarily something you have to worry about, but it's something that is really important to make sure that the projects will be able to be supported in hopefully a long-term improvement. So once again, this is talking about how the capital projects can be used. So again, expansion, renovation, major repair, or new construction. And the eligible organization has to plan on having a minimum useful life expectancy of 15 years. Obviously, the state is really interested in making sure that we have sustainable, projects that actually create long-term positive impact. So we were looking for at least 15 years of useful life expectancy. And again, where we're, making sure is that the arts capital funds are for a new project or phase of the work. We are asking all organizations to not start their projects until after they receive Board of Public Works approval. And that's mostly because even though we think the Board of Public Works will approve all of the ones that we're suggesting need to be approved, we never know. And they do have the right to not approve the ones that we're sending for their approval. So we would hate for an organization to use their funds and when they don't actually officially have access to them. So we are encouraging all the organizations to be patient and wait until at least the Board of Public Works approval. So next is our use of funds, and we have a longer list, and you can find it all in our guidelines that I will be sending after this meeting. But some of our main areas are we're looking for use of funds in terms of exterior projects. They must either result in expanded outdoor cultural or arts-related programming space or directly improve the building's physical accessibility or visibility. New construction projects, again, must include a project timeline and outcomes that demonstrate the feasibility of delivering a fully usable and operational arts facility within that 2-year funding support period. And all project planning and implementation must adhere to local jurisdiction regulations, permissions, and permitting requirements for building-related capital improvements on public or private property. And we leave that to the organization to ensure that they are meeting all of that, but they are responsible for making sure that they're following all of their local jurisdiction regulations. And in terms of what the funds may not be used for, again, you can reference this in our guidelines document, and there's a little bit of a longer list, but the main things we're looking for that are not eligible are purchases of a building, land, or vehicles, signage projects that are not connected or physically attached to the facility, design services or purchase of equipment that are not part of a permanent capital improvement, feasibility studies or master plans, non-capital expenses such as research, studies, or pre-development costs unrelated to the capital project, and finally, debt service. And a lot of this, if you go back to the idea that it must be a project that creates a usable facility at the end of those 2 years. That's why we're, some of these are in there, and you can kind of connect to the dots on that. We are looking for projects that are ready to start and can then be completed within that 2 years. So that's why we're steering away from kind of the feasibility studies or master plans, because that would not necessarily allow them to then complete that project in the 2 years after receiving the funding. So as I mentioned, Jess and I have been hard at work sifting through all of the applications for eligibility. And so we are making sure that they're all complete and that all the materials are visible. They're all able to meet the eligibility requirements. And so that's not something that you have to worry about as a panelist. Once they get to you, they've all successfully passed the eligibility check in order to be scored. So you don't have to think about the eligibility part. We are saying that all of the ones we've sent you are eligible. But if you notice something or have a concern, please reach out to me. I'm always happy to answer any questions or talk through anything further. But we're just asking that you not score the applications low simply because you feel that they're ineligible, because we've definitely done our due diligence to double check the eligibility prior to your review. So I'm going to pause really quick just to make sure there weren't any questions from that content, and open to any thoughts. Okay, good, great. All right, so I'm going to go over our timeline really quickly. Obviously, today is our panelist orientation. I'm so glad you're all here. Our period of review is approximately going to be Tuesday, November 18th to December 18th. So in that period of time, that's when we're asking each of you to review the applications that are assigned to you and create your initial scoring of the applications. And we will have 2 panel groups, so you will be reviewing half of the total that are eligible applications. So, we're looking at there being approximately 40 this year, maybe just slightly under 40, so that would mean no more than 20 for each of you to read and review and score. And so once all of that is in, and we're trying to give this time so that way no one is stressed about doing this over the holidays, or there's anything hopefully straggling through that time, so we can all take a break, and then we'll come back for our pre-panel meeting on January 8th, where we'll go over what to expect at the panel meetings that will be on January 13th and January 15th. And so in the email I sent yesterday, I have the groups assigned. And so we'll go into, if there's any conflicts or issues with that later on, but right now that's where people are assigned and when we expect you to be there. The panel meetings are open to the public, but they can't participate. So like an organization could be on there and be listening in, but they're not there to, insert any opinions or comments. What we'll do is basically round 2 will be all the top scoring applications. And that's when we'll individually discuss them. Each of you will be assigned to being panel leads. And so the meeting structure to expect will be our grounding slides and intro, and then each of you will have some applications to lead the discussion with, and there's a little bit more information coming up on that, so I will skip to the next one. What we do ask is that you maintain confidentiality. Obviously, we call small to more for a reason. And so we want to make sure that people are not sharing things or discussing over social media or sharing publicly. We want you to discuss applications only with us as staff or during the panel meetings. We want to refer all direct contact from applicants to MSAC staff. So if there's someone that's asking you, like, what's the status of my application or how's it going, please send them to me and I will be able to handle that. And finally, refer any concerns or questions to me or to other MSAC staff throughout the term of your panelist duties. And we also ask that you're mindful of State of Maryland open meeting policies. So again, counselors, applicants, and other guests may be observing the panel meeting. You want to use judgment when writing or speaking opinions. You agree to have information published to msac.org after the panel process, which is basically just your name and your county. And finally, constituents may access the panel meeting notes, recording, or slides upon request. So just keep that in mind. It's important information for you all to know. So these are our panel groups that I have assigned as of now. If we need to make any adjustments, we certainly can. But please mark those dates on your calendar. You only have to be at the panel meeting you're assigned to. So please make note of that and let me know after this meeting if you have any concerns or if that time no longer works for you, because I know we asked about your availability a little while ago. So follow up with me after if you have any concerns or questions. And like I said, each of you will be assigned as lead reader for some of the applications. So at most it will be 5 to 6 applications that you will lead, but I'm sure it will be less, once we're actually in it. And since we will be based on just the top scoring applications, some of them that you have been assigned will not actually be presented at the panel meeting. So you might have less based on the round 1 scores. But basically, the lead reader will give a 2-minute introduction of that project and grant proposal. And then there will be a 4-minute open discussion with the full panel. The staff will have 1 minute for additional comments, and then the full panel will have 2 minutes to submit your final score. So you'll have a chance after this discussion to adjust your score based on whatever you may have been swayed by the discussion of the panel during the panel meeting. So I'm going to pause there and ask if there are any questions before I turn it over to Kathy and let her take the lead. All right. And again, any questions you have, especially, after or once everything is assigned, please just let me know. I will make sure you have my work cell. You can send me a text, you can email me, call me, whatever. But I have a very open door policy and, I'm here if you need anything. So Kathy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Abby. So we're going to be talking about equity and justice in the panel process. And this is a really important part of the orientation that we do for all of our grant programs. Because if we zoom out for a second, the funding that we're talking about distributing are public dollars. And so we want to make sure that it's redistributed back out to the public in as equitable a manner as we can manage. So today we're going to be talking a bit about what that means for us and things to look out for. Before we proceed, we also want to just credit individuals and organizations that have helped shape this part of our orientation. There's Alicia Lee, she's an equity strategist. The National Assembly of State Arts Agencies, which has been a tremendous resource for us as far as what other states are doing, what's working, what's not, trying new things, just really learning a lot from each other. 2 organizations, Race Forward and Right to Be. They offer a lot of great resources, trainings. Right to Be has a lot of great free bystander intervention and bias-related trainings. So I encourage you to check these folks out if you're interested in digging a little bit further for yourself or for your workplace. So first, we want to make sure we have a shared definition when we say equity and justice. What does that mean for us within the context of the work that we're doing here at MSAC? So the shared definition we're going to be using is that equity and justice is the guarantee of fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement for all, while striving to identify and eliminate barriers that have prevented the full participation of some groups. So the second part of this definition, striving to identify and eliminate barriers that have prevented the full participation of some groups, that's really key for us because in just the world of funding, resources, philanthropy, I think we can all acknowledge that there have been so many barriers that have been placed that have kept out folks that are less resource privileged, folks of color, all of these things. There are so many barriers. In particular, we're going to be talking about implicit bias, and that being a major barrier that has prevented historically from folks being able to access resources. So we're going to talk about that barrier, how we can start to kind of break that down, and things that we can do to mitigate its effect if it comes up within the process of your evaluation. So what is implicit bias? They are the attitudes or stereotypes that affect our understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner. They're activated involuntarily without awareness or intentional control. They can be either positive or negative. Your biases may lead you to immediately feel positively or negatively about someone or something. And most importantly, everyone has implicit biases and is susceptible. I think the most dangerous place for someone to be is to believe that they're completely devoid of any bias. Biases are formed in us from a very young age, and they're informed by so many factors, such as the house that you grew up in, your school, your neighborhood, religious institutions, books, movies, media. Think about the news media and all of the narratives that they may be pushing about someone or something or someplace. Over time, they just get formed in us, and they become shortcuts that our brain makes to be able to make quick decisions about how we feel about something or how we want to take action on something. So we all have them. And it's all about being able to raise a little bit more awareness of that existing within us. So today, we're not going to, in the short time that we have together, we're not going to be able to completely sort of strip ourselves of all the biases that we might have. That's something that I think is kind of like a muscle that you can exercise. The more that you bring that more to the forefront of your mind and choose to not let that bias affect you, I do believe that you can work those biases out of you. But today we're going to be talking specifically about how we can bring more awareness to it so that we can make the choice to not let it affect us. So although we may not be able to eliminate our unconscious stereotypes and prejudices, we can increase awareness, recognize them, and take steps to limit their effects in the panel process. Two great quotes that were shared in a training with Right to Be: we all have bias, expect it, don't accept it, and awareness leads to choice. And this is a great video, but I'm going to skip it. It's such a fun video. For panelists who have served before, you've seen this, but I'm going to skip it for the sake of time today. So we're going to be talking about 6 common ways in which we see implicit bias showing up. We're going to talk about each one, what that might look like, and how we can mitigate its effects. So the first is the like me effect. It's pretty self-explanatory, but it's when you're identifying characteristics of yourself within the applicant. So in this case, you're not going to be reviewing applications from individuals. They're all going to be from organizations. So some of these things may not apply, but for example, if there's an organization that serves people that maybe they're based in the neighborhood that you grew up in, so you may have an immediate sort of connection that leads you to feel great about them because, oh my gosh, I know this neighborhood really well. That's great work that they're doing. So you might find yourself being really excited about that, and that's okay. That's a totally natural feeling, right? To get excited about something that connects with you some way personally, that's similar to yourself or your background. But just making sure that you're not, being overly generous just because you have that personal connection with them. You can set that aside and really look at the content of the application against the rubric and evaluate based off of that instead of just allowing yourself to be super excited because they connect with you in some way. And this can be negative as well. Maybe it's in an area that you don't know very well, or they work in a discipline that's not really your background or your cup of tea. So you may be looking at them a little bit more critically because you just aren't as familiar with all the things that they may be talking about. The next is the halo pitchfork effect. This is when there's a positive or negative moment that influences the entire application and how you're evaluating it. So this can happen in a couple ways. It could be that you have some sort of prior knowledge or experience with the applicant. So maybe it's an organization that you're familiar with, you've taken a workshop of theirs, you've had such a great time, and you just think that they're doing really great work. So you see that application, you're excited, and so you're kind of looking at the application with rosy colored lenses because you just know that they do great work, and so I'm just going to score them high because I want to see them do well. Instead of kind of taking a beat and saying, yes, I know they do great work, I had a great time there, but I really need to focus on what are they sharing here, are they providing the information that we need, looking at the rubric. And you know, with everything that I'm sharing, it could be, maybe it could swing negative too. Maybe you attended something, you didn't have a great time. So you have sort of like a bad taste in your mouth already. So then you may be looking at their application with a little bit more extra criticism because you're being influenced by that previous experience. Sorry, one more thing. There's it could also happen if there's a statement or statements within the application. So let's say the application starts, you're reading their mission, vision, you know, why it is that they do what they do, and there's something in there that really resonates with you, really clicks with you. So you're like, all right, this is really awesome. So then you're flying through the rest of the application, writing that sort of good feeling that you have. For this type of bias, we're just asking that you don't allow any sort of one singular experience or knowledge or statement to sway you positively or negatively for the rest of the application. Really taking your time, looking at the full content, and not letting, again, those singular experience or statement impact you. Aesthetic and artistic preferences. So this is similar to the like me effect. This is when you're identifying with applications that appeal to your personal aesthetic and artistic preferences. So I love that this group of panelists, we do this intentionally, come from a lot of different backgrounds, areas of work, you know, personal interests and experience in different types of arts. And so, you know, again, you may be encountering applications for organizations that align with your interests, your background, your expertise. And so you may find yourself getting excited about that. That's great. And you may be also seeing applications from organizations that work in disciplines that you don't know much about, or maybe it's not your cup of tea. So again, just not letting your personal preference, artistic preferences influence how you are scoring. Stereotyping. So this, I think, is what folks think of first when we talk about any kind of bias. And this is when you're forming an assumption or opinion about an applicant based on their name, gender, cultural background, race, artistic discipline, etc., that then influences your evaluation. So, so again, in this case, you're not going to be really, I mean, I guess you could stereotype based off of the name of an organization, but, you know, just really think about you're, I think, going to be encountering applications from across the state. So are there any sort of like preformed assumptions or opinions that you have about folks in Western Maryland versus the Eastern Shore versus Central? Do you have any assumptions about what their needs are or what they should be doing? Kind of putting any assumptions or opinions aside. And again, not coming in with those opinions and making judgment based off of that, but again, focusing on the content of what the applicant is trying to share with you about where they are, what their needs are, why they're doing what they're doing. Nonverbal bias, this is a positive or negative evaluation that's made based on the presentation of the application, how the application is put together, how the applicant has decided to answer these questions. So similar to artistic and aesthetic preferences, each of us has a preference in how we like to receive information. We have a preference because, you know, it just makes more sense for our brain for processing information. So, so I know for myself, for example, I am data driven. I love a bulleted list. I love numbers. They make a lot of sense to me. I think they do a good job illustrating a point. That's how just I personally like to receive information. However, you may have applicants that answer a question anecdotally by sharing a story to help illustrate their point. Just because that's not necessarily the way I gravitate towards in receiving information, that doesn't make it a less strong response. I really have to take the time and say, okay, they've chosen to answer the question in this way. Are they still hitting all the points that we need to see within the rubric? Are we getting the information that we need and scoring based off of that, instead of me immediately saying, oh, well, they've got a list, it's super clear, everything's in there, and, you know, just immediately scoring that high, and then with the one that shared anecdotally, scoring it low, because that's just not how I like to receive information. So, so you're going to see a range in ways people choose to answer the question. But again, taking the time to focus on what it is that they're trying to share against the rubric. For this application, Abby, they are going to have access to renderings and images and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, they'll have access to those attachments.
Okay, great. So in this situation, again, you're going to be seeing applications from a range of organizations. You know, some are going to be a bit larger, better resourced, have more staff than others. So some of the things that they attach here, you know, it may be really beautiful and polished. It's clear they had someone professional put it together, versus something that's a little bit more low tech. So we don't want to place immediate sort of judgment on that and, you know, say, oh, well, this one's not as high tech, so this must be a lower scoring one, so I'm going to give them a little bit more low scores here. So not allowing yourself to be, again, swayed by that. We want to acknowledge that sort of the access to resources and professional services, the level that folks have in this program are going to be wide-ranging. Academic favoritism, this one's really important to us. This is when you're favoring grant writing, which can be influenced by privilege of resources, over impact. So as I mentioned earlier, some of these organizations may have been able to afford to hire a professional grant writer, or they have a professional, you know, grants person on their team. Whereas others are not. They're much smaller. Maybe they're mostly volunteer run. Maybe they're a staff of one. So we want to keep that in mind. You will notice that punctuation and grammar are not things that we ask you to score within the rubric. And I think that there is a sort of immediate bias, especially for those who have kind of gone on the sort of conventional academic track into secondary education, so on and so forth, where it's been so ingrained in us that if someone doesn't have proper punctuation and grammar, they must be less worthy. And so I think we're asking you to kind of put that aside. Think about how English may be a second language for some of these applicants. And again, instead of punctuation and grammar and how beautifully they can write in English or not, we want to focus on the content. What is it that they're trying to communicate to us? You know, are they still getting all of the points across to us? And really scoring off of that instead of how well they can write or not. So some additional steps you can take to limit the effects of implicit bias. Adopt a spokesperson mindset throughout the process. I think just conventionally, we think of a group of adjudicators or any judges as big, scary people that are there to look out for any reason to dock you a point. And we don't like to view our panelists in this way. We really want you to think of yourself as cheerleaders. You want to learn about these organizations. You want to learn about their project. You want to understand what it is that they're trying to do. And I keep saying this, focus on the content of the application. And this doesn't necessarily mean, don't deduct any points at all. We still obviously need to look critically and make sure that the information that we need is there based off of the rubric. Just coming in with an attitude of generosity and really curiosity and wanting to understand these applicants. Frame your responses as recommendations. One of the key things that we provide here at MSAC to our applicants is feedback for applicants who were not successfully funded. And we think this is a really important part of the process for us, because then those applicants can take that feedback and they can improve their applications and come back next year. They may be also applying for other opportunities. So we think that feedback could help them as they pursue other sources of funding. So within your review form, you're going to have a text box where you can put in comments. So we ask you to kind of frame any recommendations, your responses as recommendations. So instead of saying something like, this was totally unclear, didn't make sense, you would say something like, I recommend the applicant share a bit more information about their immediate community so we can understand what impact this will have in their location. So just being more specific about what it is that you are missing in their response. We also ask you to evaluate each application alone without comparison. So you'll notice that within this process, at no time is Abby going to say, hey, panelists, we have 40 eligible applications. We need you to pick 10 that we're going to fund. That's not what we're asking you to do. We really want you to just evaluate each application as a standalone. You don't need to compare it with other applications. Compare the application against the rubric and score that way. Use your review criteria. That is the biggest tool that we have to mitigate all of these biases that we're talking about. Always just kind of coming back to that as your centering document. You're going to find yourself, having all sorts of feelings that are not related to the rubric, but not scoring off of that. If there are sort of like any notes that you have that aren't related to the review criteria, certainly those are things you can put in there, but we just ask that not influence your score. You should not be using any outside information. You don't need to click through to websites. You don't need to do extra research. You're not going to have time really to do that. We really want you to base your evaluation off of what's in the application. Consider the whole application. So there's a lot of questions and different sections that relate to the rubric criteria here. If there's, let's say there's one question, it's a two-part question, and there's a little bit of information missing there that's leaving a question mark for you. So you score that question. And then later on in the application, oh, that part that I was missing got answered in this other part. That's okay. Go back and rescore. We want to look at the whole application. If the information we need is contained within that whole application, that's great. We don't want to penalize someone for not answering the thing that we needed in the correct spot. However, it might be helpful for you to mention in the comments of, this information was missing in this question, but it would have been helpful for the reviewer to get a little bit more context about X, Y, and Z. That may be a recommendation that you want to make to them. Definitely take your time and take breaks. Time management is something you'll want to think through about, this 1 month that you have to review about 20 applications. Think about how you want to break up your time there. Because when you're rushing is when you're going to be most susceptible to trying to make these quick decisions about scores and stuff. And that's when bias can really come in. So think about your time management there. And of course, reach out to us at any time for help, whether it be technical, content related. If you're not sure what to make of something or aren't able to do something in the system, reach out to us. All right, so we're going to talk about conflict of interest and what the state considers to be a conflict of interest situation. So it would be counted as a conflict of interest if you or a relative of yours has some sort of interest in the application. Perhaps they helped put it together, they have some sort of involvement. That would be a conflict of interest. If you are an officer, director, trustee, partner, employee, contractor, any sort of like working relationship that you may have with the applicant, that is a conflict of interest. If you've applied for a position or are going to be contracting with them in any way, that would be a conflict of interest. And finally, if there's any sort of financial interest by the applicant doing well, you're going to be financially benefiting from that somehow. That is a conflict of interest. There may be some gray areas where you're not totally sure if it would be a conflict of interest or not. Again, I mentioned situations where you may be familiar with an organization. That just because you're familiar with an organization, that doesn't mean it's a conflict of interest. It's really sort of the level of relationship that you have with the applicant. So if you're ever unsure, just reach out to us and we can help determine that for you. There may be, maybe you worked for an organization and it was a terrible workplace and you hate them. That's not, you don't work there anymore, so it's not a conflict of interest, but we want you to think about, am I going to be able to really evaluate this from a fair, unbiased place? If you have had significant previous experience, you may not be able to. So we just want to remove that from your list. So yeah, reach out to us if you're unsure. All right. Done a lot of talking at you here. Any questions? All right. If not, then Abby, do you want to take a brief, like 5-minute break?
Yeah, that sounds great. And thanks, Kathy. That was a great training. So yeah, let's do 5 minutes. So let's say like 11, let's just do 11:15. And I'll see you all back here. So if people could give me signs of life that you're back. David. Great, great. Hi, Sarah. Right. And Allie, are you on?
Hi, yeah, I made it.
Hey, could you introduce yourself to the group? I realized that you didn't get a chance in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Ashley Rivera, and I'm the founder and music instructor at Performing Arts Preparatory School, located in Waldorf, Maryland. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to make a difference.
Awesome. Thanks, Allie.
Of course.
All right, so let's dive back in and talk about the application review process. So I know some of this we went over earlier, but just as, kind of reminder of some of these things. Jess and I have been doing our staff review of all the applications to ensure they're complete and that all the materials are visible and they pass the eligibility requirements. All of the applications assigned for your review have successfully passed the eligibility check. We really ask that you not score the applications low based on eligibility, because again, that's something that we have reviewed. And so we really want you to be focusing on the content of the actual scored rubric components. If you have any questions, like if there's something that you're like, hey, I don't know how this passed, or what were y'all thinking, please just reach out to me and we can discuss it. And that way we can make sure that we're all on the same page. And so in the panelist view, you will be able to see all the relevant parts of the application, but that does not necessarily mean you'll be able to see everything because some of it is not scored. So if it's not a scored area, you will not have direct access to it, but you should have all relevant parts in terms of what needs to be scored. So if you get into Smart Simple and realize, I can't see anything on this application, please let us know so we can make sure that that's all correct. And so this year we have scores anywhere from 10 max to 15 max per question. So you can score anywhere within that 0 to 10 or 0 to 15 range. And we ask that you please provide notes and justification in your scores and in the Smart Simple profile, because that really helps us. As Kathy said, we do allow for feedback for applicants. And so for me, I know when I started and I was trying to provide that feedback in a cycle I was not present for, it really helped to see the panelists that had really good notes, but some of them, there were no notes. And so it was really hard for me to give that feedback. And I think that's something I really love about MACC and our policies, because that's how organizations can learn from this process and hopefully reapply in the future and be able to get this funding that they need. So I just want to reiterate how important it is to provide notes, but also our panel discussion will be happening after the holidays. So I also think it'll be even more important for us to have notes so that way we can remember in January when we get to the panel to make sure that we have great discussion points. So this year for the panelist review, we're again asking you to base it on the rubric criteria. So we're going to assign scores for each criteria, and the range will be provided on each question, and it will be also on the rubric. And so basically we have 6 sections this year. Some of those sections, again, are not relevant for the scoring. So sections 1 and 2, the organization info and basic eligibility, are not scored, but sections 1, 2, and 3, and then some of the information from the attachments are all going to be a part of the scoring. So the way we've created the sections this year, our 3 weighted sections are section 1, which is our mission alignment and project overview, which has a 30% total. The section 2 is project plans, feasibility, and organizational impact, which is 40% of the total. And then section 3 is our community involvement and impact section, which is 30% of the total. So we're going to go into each of those questions, and I would encourage anyone, if they need any clarification, please either raise your hand or just pop up and interrupt, because I want to make sure we're all on the same page when you get to the scoring parts for the grants. So our first part, so section 1 is our mission alignment and project overview. And so our first score will be on alignment with organizational goals. So this will have a total of 15 points available to it. And so underneath each of these, it will say where you should be able to find the answers to these questions. Some of them obviously might be tucked into other answers, but what we're asking specifically should be found generally within those questions. So for example, for the alignment with organization goals, we are saying that should be found within the mission alignment and project overview, but specifically within questions 1 to 4 within that section. So here's an example of the rubric, and each of these questions that you will be scoring have these examples of how you would score within those ranges. Now, you also are able to do like 11 points. It's not in that range, but if you're like, I thought it was better than good to very good, but not quite excellent to outstanding, you know, you can use whatever 0 to 15 that you feel is appropriate. But these are just giving you some general ranges based on how you feel the organization has answered these questions. So for example, for this one, excellent to outstanding, which could be between 13 to 15 points, we're saying that we're looking for clear, specific, and thorough explanation of how the proposed project will facilitate the organization's mission. Where, you know, if you're thinking this is really not answering it, for marginal to fair, you might say it's unclear in explaining how the proposed project will facilitate the organization's mission. So you have that whole range, and it's up to your discretion as a panelist where you think that score is. Again, you will have an opportunity during the panel meeting to adjust your final scores, but your initial scores will be primarily just based on how you feel the applicant has answered the questions and where you feel like they fall within these rubric score zones. So before I move forward, any questions about that? Because these are going to go into each of the categories that you will be scoring. All right. So our second question that you'll be scoring is identification of challenges and future success. So for this, we're thinking that you'll be looking at questions 4 and 5 in the application, and that's how you'll score this. So we're excellent to outstanding. We're looking for applications that provide a clear, specific, and thorough explanation of how the proposed project will facilitate this might, I don't know that that was corrected, but anyway, you'll see, we'll have the rubric, you'll have the rubric, you'll have the guide. And so
Abby, I just dropped the language for excellent to outstanding for this criteria.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Kathy. All right. So that would be, so those are the 2 questions within the first section. So each of those would be 15 points total. So if they're absolutely excellent to outstanding, like they're outstanding answers, you could get a total of 30 points for this first section. So that is section 1. Any questions before we move on to section 2? All right. So section 2, we have our project plans, feasibility, and organizational impact. For this, there are a total of 10 points each. You're going to be scoring 4 subcategories within question 2. So for this first one, 2A is their timeline development. And so we're going to ask you to look for the responses in the project plans, feasibility, and organizational impact section, but specifically the questions 3 to 4. And so this will give you the rubric scoring ranges. And so, for example, excellent to outstanding will be the project timeline is clear, specific, and realistic, and includes strong evidence of prior planning and research. And this is where you're going to also use your judgment, where we're again looking for projects that will be able to be completed to create usable, accessible facilities at the end of that 2-year period. And So this is one of those questions that will get to whether you think that it is clear, specific, and realistic in terms of the timeline, and will they be able to complete that. For 2B, this is about budget. So budget preparation and feasibility. Again, you have a total of 10 points for this, and you should be able to find the answers in questions 3 and 5. And so the example for excellent to outstanding is the budget is detailed, well-researched, and clearly tied to successful completion of the proposed activities. The budget demonstrates that the project is financially feasible and leverages non-state funding. And so you'll see once you get into Smart Simple and open up the applications, there's a narrative question, and then there's also a budget table. So looking at those answers, you can then decide where you think it fits on the 0 to 10 point scale. So moving into 2C, our third of the 4 questions is operational capacity, and specifically the project team. So for this, you're going to look at specifically question 6. And the example for excellent to outstanding is the application provides clear and specific evidence that the project team has the necessary skills, resources, and partnerships to ensure successful completion of the project within the 2-year project period. Where comparatively, if you're thinking this is really not answering these questions, you might think it's marginal to fair, and that would be the application lacks sufficient evidence of the project team's skills, experience, resource, or partnerships, making it unclear whether the project can be completed successfully within the 2-year project period. So it's a bit nuanced, but you're really looking for whether or not you feel like they've answered these questions as completely as possible. And if you as a panelist, after reading all of the materials, feel like they've answered this. And Kathy mentioned this in her part of the training, but we do want you to look holistically at the whole application. When we say specifically question 6, it doesn't mean that there won't be parts of that answer in other answers, but that's where, the main bulk of the answers should be, because that's where we're asking that question. But we want you to holistically look at the entire application, including the attachments, because this is, there's a lot of pieces that go into all of these capital project proposals. And so, there's no way that it will all be in one place, but, at least the guide is to send you to where it should be primarily, but we do want you to have the opportunity to look back. And if you get done reading the whole application, you're like, oh, I really scored that low, but I got the answers by reading all the attachments, then you can just change your score. So we just ask that you look holistically, but hopefully this will be at least a jumping off point of where you should find the majority of the answer. And finally, for section 2, 2D is organizational sustainability. Again, 10 points total. And so this is where you'll look at specifically question 7. And for excellent to outstanding, we would be looking for an application that demonstrates a clear understanding of the capital project's operational and financial impacts and presents well-defined strategies to address challenges, adapt to changes, and maximize opportunities for long-term sustainability, including staffing and budget considerations. So, if you're reading all these different answers and reading the whole application, and you get to scoring this area and you're like, I'm really missing a piece of that puzzle, then you can look at the rubric and say, okay, I think it would actually fall into satisfactory because I have some questions about that. So again, use your best judgment on where you think it falls, but you have that 10-point range to score within. So any questions on section 2? All right, so our final section is section 3. And so this is going to be 30 points total, or 30% of the total score. We have 100 points total, so 30 points or 30%, same thing. But there's 3 different areas you'll be scoring within this. So our first is community voice and impact. And you should be able to find the answers primarily within questions 1 and 2 within this section. And so for excellent to outstanding, we would be looking for an application that demonstrates a deep understanding of community needs and presents creative, well-aligned solutions for serving them. It outlines clear and effective outreach strategies showing that the project has been shaped by input from appropriate stakeholders and community members. Detailed evidence is provided on how the project will positively impact the immediate and surrounding communities and county. So that's what we would be looking for in total. So if they have all of those things, 10 points. And if they don't, then again, look through the rubric and use your best judgment where you think they would score based on that. For 3B, we're looking at our accessibility outcomes. Again, this is 10 points total. And we're looking for, it should be specifically within question 3. And so for this, we're looking for excellent to outstanding answers. The application should provide a clear and comprehensive plan for enhancing accessibility for people with disabilities, detailing specific features. So that could be ramps, it could be sensory friendly spaces, etc., and identifying the groups impacted. We also are looking for how they were actively engaged in the planning process. It also clearly demonstrates how the project will expand access for people of color and individuals living below the federal poverty level, specifying programs or services to be offered and describing their direct measurable benefits to these communities. So that's a little bit of a very comprehensive score. So, within that, we're looking for, as many of those things as possible within the excellent to outstanding category. If they're missing that or haven't talked about that at all or any of those areas, then they might be a marginal to fair score for that category. But again, this all goes directly back to the legislation and what we're asked to make sure we're supporting through this program. And then finally, our last score is local workforce opportunities. And so this would be found within question 4 of section 3. And so for an outstanding answer, we would be looking for an application that provides clear and specific evidence of how the project will create new jobs or workforce development opportunities in the community and outlines concrete strategies for ensuring these opportunities are accessible through inclusive and equitable hiring practices. So, we hope that, they'll be able to answer that thoroughly, and then you can score them excellent to outstanding. And again, if they do not, then you can see where you think they would fall within the other rubric categories. So that is our total question scoring. And I want to just pause for a moment to see if there's any questions about this. I'm sure it will make a lot more sense when you get into Smart Simple and open up the whole application, but you will see, each section is labeled and then it has the question numbers within each section. So when you're able to pull up the application summary, you will see all this, and hopefully we've done our job to make sure it's as clear as possible. But if not, I'm again here for any questions or any support you may need. So I'm going to move it back over to Kathy.
Yep, we're going to talk about the panel process technology. Before I do, I just wanted to mention with the rubric, I know it's a lot to digest right now, but I will say, when you start reviewing, you're going to start to really kind of get in a groove of like what questions to refer to for particular sections. So definitely, just give yourself grace for like the first handful of applications that you start going through. Don't feel like you need to get the scores absolutely right the first time. You can always come back to it later as you kind of like get more familiar with the process and how to apply the rubric. So I just wanted to make that point. All right, so the technology. So you're going to be logging into Smart Simple, which is where you went to apply to become a panelist. And in the top right corner, you're going to see something that says Panelist Home. And so that's going to take you to your panelist dashboard. And there you will see in the pending first review section, that is where you're going to click to see your list of applications that's been assigned to you. Can we get next slide? So this is what that list is going to look like. And then you'll be able to click on open on the right-hand side to open up that application. And when you do, this is what it will look like. You're going to click on the blue application summary button. That's going to open up the whole application as a separate window in a PDF format. And then on this page, you'll have your rubric criteria. So it's gonna, all the language that Abby just went over with the criteria of what good to excellent to outstanding, etc., that's going to appear actually on your form. And so then you'll enter in the points that you're assigning there. Then you'll have a comment box for feedback. And also you may want to, if you want, keep notes for yourself of things you want to bring up for the panel meeting. You can use that comments box as well. You want to click Save Draft to save all of your scores and comments to revisit later. Once you click that submit button, you won't be able to go back and edit it. So I would suggest don't hit submit until you're really sure that you're ready to go and submit the thing. I would recommend keeping everything in save draft. And then once you've gone through everything, then going through and clicking submit. So for the panel meeting itself, we briefly went over this earlier, and we will be going more in depth about this in our pre-panel check-in that's scheduled for early January. And we're going to have a little bit more time to familiarize ourselves with the processes and make sure you're comfortable going into that space. So just an overview, we start by sharing the applicant name, the grant ID, and the initial average score. And then the panelists will all open up that application. And so you'll be able to refer to the application and what your initial comments and scores were in your discussion. And then the lead panelist will kick us off with up to 2 minutes to introduce the grant. You would be highlighting the strong and weak parts of the applications, any questions you had, and you would summarize your recommendations based on the rubric. And then we'll move into additional discussion with all panelists for 4 minutes. And that's when other panelists can contribute their thoughts or recommendations. And then after the 4 minutes, the staff will have about a minute to provide any clarifications if needed. And also, if there were any comments that were made that were not related to the rubric, we would just provide reminders about not letting that influence your score. And then finally, you would have 2 minutes to amend any of your scores and comments based on the discussion. Then we'll average up your scores and share what the final average was and put that up on the slide. And then after the panel meeting, if we have time, we will have a policy discussion. So this is going to be a space just for panelists where you can tell us about what your experience was like, any thoughts you had about, a particular criteria. Did it need to be fleshed out a little bit more? Was there, just organization of the application that you thought would make more sense? Any of these things, as Abby mentioned earlier, we're very open to feedback. We're very receptive to panelists' feedback, especially in helping inform how we might tweak things next year. So you'll have the opportunity to do that. If we don't have time to actually formally meet, we may find another time, or we may send out a survey or something like that. Just some things to keep in mind for the panel meeting. So all of the discussions and the second round of scoring, that's happening live. So you'll want to make sure you're at a place where you have a reliable device and reliable internet connection. So just keep that in mind. If you do need help with securing a reliable device, please let us know. That's something we can help with. So just some things to keep in mind there. Another thing that we highly recommend is that you prepare your notes for your lead panelist remarks for the ones that you're assigned. So, after this panel meeting, Abby's going to be sending out that sort of assignment list. So you're going to see which applications specifically you're assigned as a lead panelist. So if that advances to the panel meeting, you're going to be doing that 2-minute introduction. So I think for those applications, you may, especially want to make sure you're taking some good notes for yourself of things you want to bring up in that introduction. We have some panelists that even script it out for themselves, knowing that they only have 2 minutes. That's totally fine too, and highly encouraged. So yeah, just keep that in mind for your lead panelist sections. For compensation, so you're getting compensated $50 for today's orientation, and then compensation for the review, the at-home review time is dependent on the number of applications you're actually reviewing. We're estimating about 18 to 20 per group, so we'll probably be in that $375 range. And then the virtual panel meeting, that's another $125. We estimate about 45 minutes to review each application. You know, some may take longer, some may take shorter, but that's about how much we estimate, if that helps you with kind of thinking about your time management over the course of the month for your review. Invoices, we will prepare those for you after the panel meeting and include all of the components of the compensation. And there is a place within your Smart Simple profile where you can go and actually upload your W-9 so that we have that on hand and ready to go when it comes time for submitting invoices. We ask you to upload it in Smart Simple instead of emailing us because it's a lot more secure that way. So if you log into your profile and click on My Profile, if you scroll down, you'll see a place where you can upload that W-9. But let us know if you have any issues with that.
Kathy, if we've uploaded the W-9 from the past, is there a date by which we need to do a new one, or if it's still all up to date, can we just leave as is?
I would say if it's within the past couple years, it's fine. We can reuse it. If it's any older than that, we might ask for a more recent copy. But, you know, if you already have one in there, the thing that we just want to primarily make sure is that your address isn't changed or, you know, so yeah.
Thank you.
So then once we get to the invoices, after the panel meeting, it will take probably about 6 to 8 weeks. Sometimes it's sooner, but there is just a lot of steps that our payments have to go through within the state to actually get out to issuance from the comptroller's office. So that's just something to expect in this process. And just some final reminders and tips. So we ask panelists that you refrain from taking any content from the application or materials and putting it into any AI tools or services. You know, maybe you're in a bind and you're like, oh, I want AI to summarize the application for me. We ask just for, you know, confidentiality purposes and, you know, integrity of this process that you're not taking any material that the applicants have shared with us and putting it into any of those programs. We recommend for Smart Simple when you're working within the platform, Google Chrome seems to be the most compatible browser. So if you are having any issues like opening up files or like doing particular things, that's the first troubleshooting thing that we recommend is to try Google Chrome, and that usually fixes the problem. So that just a tip there for you to be aware of. It works fine on other browsers, but for some reason there's sometimes little weird things that happen there. So give Google Chrome a try if you aren't already using it. So this slide deck, meeting recording, your lead panelist assignments, other instructions, those are all going to be emailed to you after this meeting. Along with the guidelines and a sort of chart of the scoring rubric that you can use as reference. But again, all of the rubric sort of criteria and breakdown of points, that's going to be within the rubric form in Smart Simple. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible for you there. Again, think about your time management. I like to drive the point home that we have to think about how much time these applicants have put into carefully crafting their application. We ask that as panelists, we also share that same sort of care in the time that we put into their review. It's really not fair if you're kind of rushing all at the last minute. So really, you know, think about that time management, how you want to break up. Maybe it's, you know, 2 or 3 a week that you want to do over the next month. The reviews, your first at-home review is going to be due on December 18th. And yeah, consider the time commitment involved. If after this panel meeting, you're like, wow, you know what, this was a lot more involved than I realized, that's totally okay. And if you feel like you can't do it within that time period or can't make the panel meeting, all of these things, the sooner we know that you just don't feel like you're able to participate, the better. We do have some alternates, but we can't activate those alternates after a certain time. Like, we want to get them into the process as soon as possible. So if you feel like, I just can't do this, no hard feelings, just let us know, and we'll be able to pull in some other folks into the process. And reach out anytime, again, if you have any technical or content issues or questions. We are here to support you in the process.
Great. Thanks, Kathy. So it's now, that's it. So, so we're open for questions. If anyone has any questions they'd like to go through. And again, thank you so much for your time and sitting through almost the 2 hours. But we're here to answer any questions that you may have. Sarah.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was an awesome overview. I have a question about like expert content related to the capital nature of these projects. So having not yet been inside the applications, you did mention there might be like mock-ups or drawings or illustrations that we need to review. I'm curious if you anticipate assessing those things against the criteria requiring a certain amount of information about the capital process, and knowing that some of us bring that expertise, some of us, I bring definitely familiarity with that work, but not expertise, right? And so, like, curious if you have any advice for how to approach that, or like, when should we come to you and be like, I need more information?
Sure. No, that's a great question. And so I'll start, and then Kathy, if there's anything you want to kind of add to that. But we are trying to be as accessible and open to all of the possible applicants that are eligible for this grant. And so, as I'm talking to organizations, I do want to say, like, the proposals run an entire gambit of possibilities. I mean, even just thinking of a project that's requesting 50,000 versus a project requesting 500,000, and then even within that, the 500,000 might just be a phase of a much larger capital project. So, we're not looking for anyone to necessarily give like that technical feedback on like drawings or renderings or things like that. But they should, like, basically the advice I gave to organizations before applying is, think of those attachments as ways to support the narrative, and ways to support, or connect the dots on some of the narrative pieces. But we're not, like, I didn't select the panel based on like who has, ADA expertise or things like that. We're really asking you to score what is within the rubric. So we're not necessarily asking for that technical expertise. Where I would say a caveat to that is, like, we are looking for the feasibility or your opinion of the feasibility of the project being able to be completed within the 2-year support period. So, we're not asking for the very technical things, but we are asking kind of more broadly, do you feel like, with all of these materials submitted, that, there is a feasible project that, could be completed within that time?
Yeah, and it's also our hope that like those some of those drawings or renderings are just like helping you in your evaluation of like giving you the visual of what they're trying to describe in writing. It can be really helpful sometimes, and that's feedback we've gotten from panelists in the past of you can really try and read and try and follow, but if the applicant's providing that visual, it just helps kind of really bring it all together. So that's a key component. And yes, and like, if you do happen to have sort of that very sort of technical expertise about a particular thing and are noticing something, that's definitely something we ask you to note, because we'll share that with the applicant of like, oh, this other material might be more durable and cost effective, might be something you want to look into, or this phase that you think is going to take 1 week, I've been through it before, it actually, takes a month, or, things like that you want to note for them to look out for. And certainly if it's something that you're like, whoa, there's a huge discrepancy here. This process definitely takes 5 months instead of a week. And they're not going to be able to do this in 2 years time frame. That's also something certainly we're asking you to look out for. But yeah, just echoing Abby, that we're not expecting you all to have really necessarily that like technical expertise. So we're not asking you to be engineers and like architects and like okaying these things. Yeah, again, mostly there for help contextualizing and giving visual to what they're trying to describe to us.
Thank you, Kathy and Abby. And I'll just add, like, having been part of the past 2 cycles, we did have like instances where people, were definitely drawing from some sort of like area of expertise. Like I think in the panel meeting last year, someone was reviewing like an ADA component of a project and was like, well, this dimension is not actually ADA compliant. And, we actually kind of have to, in that moment, sort of guide the conversation back to the rubric, and I think Kathy is right, like observations or notes that we could pass along like are really valuable, but I think you also have to always go back to the rubric, like is this relevant to the question that I'm evaluating or the criteria that I'm evaluating. You can include the notes in there, but make sure that like, your preference for a certain material or knowledge of a certain material isn't like weighing in on like the score that you're giving. And then I'll also just say, like, having gone through this a couple of times, a lot of times those visuals and attachments can really help, especially with like evaluating the planning process and the kind of making sure that like the description is lining up with the visuals and the visuals are lining up with the budget, like kind of looking at all those pieces holistically to help assess like the clarity of the plan for the project, I think has been where those attachments have been most helpful.
But also, and I think the last part of your question, Sarah, like, I don't have a threshold of when you should come to me. Like, if you have any questions or concerns, like I'm here. So, I will not judge, like the the threshold of when to ask for clarity. That's literally my job, and I would love to chat with any of you if you have any questions at all. And also the thing I would like to add to that too, it's like if you're noticing, in reviewing, like again, going back to the feedback, like this is a fairly new grant for MSAC, and so we have made adjustments from the first 2 cycles, now going into the third. But, if you have any feedback, like I would love, at the end to hear anything you have to share about, hey, this question could have been different, or like, I feel like I'm totally missing this part of the equation that would help me score better. But anything we can do to strengthen the application for future cycles would be greatly welcomed.
If there aren't any other immediate questions, I'm curious to hear from panelists that have served in other MSAC programs, what your sort of like hot tips are for other panelists approaching this process, whether it be their at-home review time or preparing for a panel meeting. Any hot tips you'd like to share with us, or things you like to do?
I'll share. I just say I encourage you to reach out to other panelists, to reach out to the staff. They're really great about answering questions and talking things over. So, yeah, and get it done early. Although I don't always follow that.
And take a lot of notes as you're reviewing. With so many applications, when you go into the panel meeting, it's helpful as that, but also just to be able to remember exactly what topics, like when questions come up, to be able to reference quickly. It's huge. It's a muscle to build, but it's really useful.
I also just recommend, like as Kathy and Abby were saying, like planning it out as much as you can. So usually what I like to do is, those first few ones are always going to be fresh. They're going to be a little bit slower, but then as they noted, you kind of build into kind of a rhythm of things. And so it might get a little bit faster to review certain applications depending on their quality. And you just want to make sure you have the time to go back, if anything, and make sure you save everything in a draft. So, just in case, like, I didn't think about this particular rubric criteria as much. Let me just take a look to see before I submit my final grades, just like I just briefly go back. I'm not trying to redo the whole thing, but at least make sure to have enough time before you actually submit your final grades and comments. Also, last time, at least before the panel, you guys had this wonderful kind of statement for like lead panelists that you guys created, which was super awesome and kind of, I think, really kept us for the kind of time task, because it goes pretty quickly when you're talking about the applications during the panel. And at least I found that super helpful for review last time.
Hadassah, are you referring to like we provided like a sample template of how to structure yours? Yeah, that
template was great. Yeah.
So yeah, we'll definitely go over that in our pre-panel check-in for sure, giving you all sort of like a template to work off of. Sometimes it's hard to think about how you kick off an introduction, but we'll give you some tools to help craft that for sure.
Oh, one final thing I'll add. The bias part is really important, because we can easily fall into that without even realizing it. So I try and be mindful of that myself. So I recommend if you have that, Catherine, if we have that sort of list that we can keep, I'm sure you're going to send it. That could help.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll be sending these slides out. So yeah, thanks for pointing that out. It's really important. Especially I think when you get into an autopilot, it's just so easy to kind of fall back on just how you're naturally processing things. And so, yeah, we do ask, just give it a try. Like when I say that, like use that lens of like, oh yeah, I just learned about this kind of bias. Let me see if it comes up for me in the process of evaluation. So yeah, please definitely keep that front of mind as you're working through.
And I would just add to that as a reminder the importance of really looking at each application individually. We have it's a really solid pool of applicants, but the projects are really diverse and really range very broadly in terms of scope and location, et cetera, et cetera. So, please just, make sure you're scoring each application as its own standalone application, because it would be pretty impossible to compare them anyway, because they're very different. So. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, I will be following up with all the materials that we said we will share. I am planning on making sure that you're all assigned in Smart Simple on Tuesday, the 18th. So, don't worry about this weekend in terms of starting that. Everyone enjoy your weekend, and then you can get into it next week. But you all have my info, and in my email signature is my work phone, so you can text, call, etc. if you need anything at all. But I will be sending all these materials after, and then we'll be going into the review period. So I just want to thank you all again. It was so amazing to see this. Yes, I will be sending the list. Thanks, Sue. I will be sending the list for conflicts before we assign the reviews. So yeah, anything else, Jess or Kathy?
No, just thank you all. And thanks in advance for all of the great work that you're going to do here. We know that it's a big time commitment, but it's really important work, and we really value everything that you put into it. And I hope you enjoy the process too and get to learn about some really cool organizations trying to do some cool things. I think that's also another huge perk about this.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here and thank you for serving. And I will be in touch soon. Have a great
Thank you so
weekend.
much. Take care.
Bye. Take care, everybody.
All right.